Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Leading for Good 2022. It is my distinct pleasure to kick us off for the day and serve as Master of Ceremonies. For those of you I may not know, my name is Ella McCann, and I am Manager, External Relations and Strategic Partnerships here at Baumhart Center. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the land that Loyola University Chicago occupies. I will read our land acknowledgement statement and encourage you to reflect on it as we proceed with our day. The Loyola University Chicago community acknowledges its location on the ancestral homelands of the Council of the Three Fires, the Ojibwa, Ottawa, and Potawatomi tribes, and a place of trade with other tribes, including the Ho-Chunk, Miami, Menominee, Sauk, and Meskwaki. We recognize that descendants of these and other North American tribes continue to live and work on this land with us. We recognize the tragic legacy of colonization, genocide, and oppression that still impacts Native American lives today. As a Jesuit university, we affirm our commitment to issues of social responsibility and justice. We further recognize our responsibility to understand, teach, and respect the past and present realities of local Native Americans and their continued connection to this land. Thank you. I joined Baumhart Center in June of last year because I truly believe we are at the forefront of the future of business. We are creating transformational leaders through our Baumhart Scholars MBA program. We are highlighting businesses and leaders who are shaping our world. I also joined because I absolutely love connecting with people. I see so many outstanding leaders in this room today, and I want to go, you need to meet you, you need to meet you, and then you can have exponential impact. If we have learned anything in the past few years, it is that we are truly stronger together. And anytime we can bring together this group of outstanding leaders in the Baumhart Network, I am reminded of what is possible to drive change. I also want to thank you all for being here. I think we normally wait till the end of the day to say our thank yous, and I will thank folks again, but it feels important to start with gratitude. I want to thank the speakers for sharing with us. A special thank you to our sponsors, Comcast, ITW, William Blair, Packed with Purpose, who is responsible for the notebooks, gift boxes that you will all receive. Everyone gets a gift, we love that. Campbell & Co., Mesro, and Northern Trust. And last but not least, a huge thank you to all of the staff here at Quinlan and Loyola who have made this possible, including but not limited to Ryan Sanan, Ashlyn Weber, Ann Davida Copez, Professor Jen Griffin, Aranza Valverde, Ann Smart, our student workers from FBC, Ramat Mohammed, Sarah Vonk, Jesse Goodman, Molly Henry, Interim Dean Novak, Abel Javelin, Eddie Appleton, and anyone else who stepped in to help us. Round of applause. Before I turn it over, some housekeeping. Restrooms are out of this room to the right behind the elevators. They're on either side of the elevators. And I would now like to introduce our Provost, Margaret Callahan, to give us some opening remarks.
Good morning, everyone. The excitement in this room is simply amazing. I know you must feel it as I do. So thank you all so much for being here. I want to take this opportunity to also acknowledge and welcome Karen as our new director. This is my first opportunity to publicly welcome you. And I also have to mention our amazing Baumhart Center team and all the work they do. I will not go through the list that Ella just provided for all of us, but it is a remarkable group in a remarkable School of Business, the Quinlan School of Business. I'd like to officially welcome all of you assembled here at the Schreiber Center on our Water Tower campus, and also those watching online to our 2022 Leading for Good conference, this opening session. I have a soft place in my heart for this because when we were all under COVID protocols and sitting in our home offices, I did the Leading for Good series, and I was amazed back then about the people that came forward for the purpose of this conference. So I'm really very pleased that you're here. As the provost and an alumna of Loyola, it is my distinct pleasure to see our university hosting a conference such as this. It's a perfect reflection of Loyola's mission and vision for the future. One of my duties as provost was to lead the drafting of our most recent strategic plan. Now, as most of you know, strategic plans cover a whole lot of ground. And the best plans leave no doubt as to the organization's core values. And that's how we organized our plan, with identifying what we call our enduring values, things that aren't going to change every 3 years or every 5 years at the end of a plan. And don't worry, I am not going to read our entire strategic plan to you, although I encourage you to go to our website and do so, because I think it really is a document that will direct Loyola into the future. But I am going to share just 4 words from the plan, the words that begin the entire document. To the greater good. And those 4 simple words say everything about how Loyola views itself and its place in the world. It lives through our enduring values as an institution, our commitment to our Catholic Jesuit mission, diversity, equity, and inclusion, to extraordinary academics and research, and to care for our world. To actually confront social justice and environmental problems and embrace the need not only to look at them, but to find solutions. We expect that of our students at all levels. Our undergraduate students come to Loyola because they see that as something they want to accomplish in their undergraduate education, and certainly also our graduate students. It is a call to action that the Baumhart Center has enthusiastically taken on since its founding. Leading for Good brings together executives and rising leaders, that's all of you, who live at the intersection of profit and purpose, who are actively engaged in seeking out a greater good. It is exactly what our Baumhart Center seeks to do. We have seen what happens when profit is the only purpose. Our communities and people in them have paid a price for that narrow vision, a worldview so centered on shareholder value that it seems to have a limited place for human values or for the value of community. That's not the vision you'll see here. We at Loyola and the Baumhart Center support our students and leaders seeking to leverage business ideas to build a more just, humane, and sustainable world. Just look at some of the speakers that have joined us for the Power Chats and for the conference today. So many people that are purpose-driven leaders driving positive change in the spaces where they live and where they work. I am especially proud that several Baumhart scholars are leading some of these conversations for us. The Baumhart scholars are a highly selective, cohort-based MBA group of students in our program within the Loyola's Quinlan School of Business. They are working professionals who seek to drive their careers and social impact forward simultaneously, and they're financially supported by Loyola. That is our commitment as a university and as our Quinlan School of Business. For those here in the audience and watching online that are considering an MBA, and yes, you could call this a plug, all Baumhart scholars receive a $20,000 scholarship to celebrate their commitment to advance the greater good. Some scholars also receive the Schreiber Scholarship for nonprofit leaders or the Edelman Scholarship for those working in corporate social responsibility or environmental sustainability. These are the commitments that Loyola is making to drive change. This is all part of our commitment to the greater good. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker this morning, Brenda Asare, who is clearly committed to a Loyola vision. We cannot claim her as a Loyola graduate, but looking at her life and her career, I'd like to suggest that she certainly fits into our Loyola family and aligns with our alumni across the world. Brenda is president and CEO of the Alfred Group. The Alfred Group's mission is to accelerate the nonprofit community's impact and to advance social change. Sounds like a great fit for the Baumhart Center, don't you think? And also leading for good. Brenda, welcome, and we are so grateful that you are here with us today.
Good morning, and thank you so much, Provost, for that kind introduction. It's wonderful to be in a room again, to see all of you wonderful people. My name is Brenda Asare, President and CEO of the Alfred Group, a consulting firm who works primarily with not-for-profit organizations who are looking to make an impact in the world. I'm also a member of the advisory board for the Baumhart Center. I joined the board during the pandemic, and it's so wonderful to finally see everyone in the room and to see some of my fellow board members, hi Dory, with us this morning. This is an exciting time for the social impact sector to reimagine and advance new possibilities for the greater good of the world. It's also exciting to be leading an organization that's helping to drive those changes. At the Alfred Group, our mission is to accelerate the nonprofit community's impact and advance social change. Our mission is very much in line with Baumhart Center, as collectively we are bringing expanded skills, deeper commitment, and higher aspirations to our work in every sector. The Baumhart Center prepares leaders to tackle society's most pressing challenges through education, engagement, and research. It's about connecting great people to the ideas and organizations that work for the greater good. In other words, a central focus is building the right talent pipeline. The Alfred Group has 6 flagship services that includes areas like strategic planning, DEI programming, data management, analytics, and assessments to help organizations sharpen their strategic focus and deliver more effectively on their mission. But the one area of expertise that I'm the most proud of is anchored in much of our work as it relates to governance and leadership development. People are everything. So much of what we hear in the news and in business revolves around tech and the need to scale up. Algorithms that make all the decisions and a constant focus on growth at all costs. We've seen where this has led us. Decisions that are so narrowly focused on the near-term goals that we lose sight of the greater community good that should be anchoring us all. You've probably worked with data management issues in your careers. There's that old phrase, garbage in, garbage out. All of this amazing technology is only as good as the person on the other side of the keyboard. What's their worldview? What's the worldview of that senior director or manager steering their teams? What's the worldview of their CTO, their CEO, their board of directors? Are they diverse, inclusive, equity-centered? Is the well-being of their communities at the center of all that they do? Are they working for the greater good and not just a company's bottom line? Are they putting purpose on par with profit? That is why the Baumhart Center and conferences like Leading for Good are so important, and why my own company makes leadership and governance development such a high priority for our clients. Leaders matter. Board of directors matter. They set the tone. They set the purpose and values of the organization. To the people gathered here, all of you gathered here, those of you watching online, and the recent graduates of the Baumhart Scholars MBA program, you are the future. I met Jordan Sorrell, one of our sponsors from Comcast, earlier this morning, a young man doing tremendous work to change our city. You are the future. You set the tone, all of you, and you shape our future. As we all take away the learnings from this conference and new connections with each other, it is with a vision for good in the world, not just a vision for good, but doing more good. During these troubling times, doing good is needed more than ever. Thank you for what you are doing to put more good into the world when things look so dark. Good brings hope and light. Thank you for having me this morning. It's now my distinct pleasure to hand it over to Karen. Karen joined the Baumhart Center as our director in March. And I'm so thrilled, Karen, that you are here bringing your good leadership for change. So with that, the podium is yours, and thank you again for all that you're doing.
All right, good morning. Thank you, Brenda, for the welcome and for serving on our advisory board with a few other amazing people. Thank you, Provost Callahan, for kicking us off and anchoring us in the values of this institution from which we are rooted and that we grow together on this topic of leading for good. And a huge thank you to our speakers and our sponsors. And I don't know that I can speak as quickly as Ella, but I want to thank Ella and I want to thank the entire team. So many people are here to ensure that we have this time together to focus on each other and the content. That doesn't happen easily, so thank you. So my name's Karen Weigert. Thank you for joining us today, both in person and online, and thank you to the many folks who've been joining us for the last 2 weeks in our power chats, our virtual discussions. It's so great to see you here. I joined the Baumhart Center in March, 2 months ago. But I joined, I think, likely for the same reason that you are all here. We know a better future is possible, and we know that we can all play a part in creating it. So imagine thriving communities in an inclusive economy on a healthy planet. To get there, we not only can play a part, but we must. And we're only going to get there if every sector and every one of us is involved, and if we continue to find new ways to work together. If we continue to educate folks with the mindset of a Baumhart scholar who join a program because of social impact. To build that with the mindset of individuals who are leading companies around purpose. To get there with the mindset of individuals who are leading nonprofits with purpose. And government with purpose. All three of those sectors are in our programs. And today, all of you are here. And this event, like all Baumhart Center events, is about connecting great people to the ideas that work. Building the knowledge, the community, and the inspiration to shape this future together. So I hope that many of you knew folks when you walked in the room. I hope that many of you know more folks when you leave the room. That's really what we want to do. We're building this community of change makers. We're doing it so that we can address the challenges that lie before us. So this year, for Leading for Good, our topic is On Purpose, Accelerating Impact in a Changing World. So let's look at it. On purpose. Absolutely two meanings. This is intentional. We have to intentionally make different choices, and it's on purpose. It's on that greater good. It is about leading for good. We are in a changing world. We are extraordinarily aware of the challenges that have been just exacerbated in the last few years around economic inequality, around race, around health inequities, and around the growing challenges of climate behind it all. And yet, accelerating impact, that's what it's all about. And it's being demanded of us by every constituent. It's being asked from us by folks who haven't always been at the table. And it's about the tables that we are creating so that everyone has a role. So you've probably heard the phrase, there's no time to wait. Well, luckily you're in the right room. This is a room of people who are not waiting. We're going to build it together. And you have today to connect with each other with great ideas. And luckily, I have a few people who are going to help me kick this off. So to that approach, I would like to get us started with an amazing panel that's going to help open this discussion about On Purpose, Accelerating Impact in a Changing World. So I'd like to invite some civic leaders, entrepreneurs, institution builders, but fundamentally change makers to join me up here. Michael Strautmanis, Executive Vice President of the Obama Foundation. Thank you.
These are our people.
These are our people.
I love it.
Colleen Ryan, Chief Marketing and Communications Officer, First Women's Bank.
Yeah.
Thru, Shivakumar, CEO and co-founder, Cohesion.
Yeah.
And Michael Fassnacht, President CEO, World Business Chicago.
Chi-town.
Thank you all. So the last few years have magnified the challenges that we face. When we think about what our world looks like and what we want it to look like, they don't match. And yet, while we've had so many challenges, they seem to have driven us apart. It's been a time of separation, not a time of coming together. So how do we build this future that we're talking about? And Michael Strautmanis, my neighbor here to my right,
yes.
I'd like to start with you. When we're thinking about creating thriving communities in an inclusive economy on a healthy planet, it is about people in place. You right now are building a change maker organization in a physical place. How are you meeting the moment in both of those things?
Well, let's say, how are we trying to meet the moment? Because I think this is one of those places in where the attempt really is the purpose. And I do want to say on behalf of everybody, we spent some time together in preparation for this, how excited we are all to be with you and to be a part of this. And so thank you again to Loyola and Quinlan and to you for your leadership. I think it is interesting that President Obama made the choice to both run a set of existing, like right now, been in the field for 5 years, global leadership development training programs, right? We have cohorts in Asia, Africa, Europe, hundreds of leaders that we're training. It's one of the reasons why we're here, because we think leadership is such an important accelerant in the impact we want to make. And at the same time, beginning the building and the development of the Presidential Center on the south side of Chicago. And I think that what we've decided to, and it comes with challenges. I'll list just a couple of them, and then I'll talk about the opportunity that comes with this. The first challenge is resource allocation, right? If you want to run leadership development programming, if you're driving the My Brother's Keeper Alliance across the country, and you're building what will be upwards of $600 million in hard and soft cost development on the south side of Chicago that you want to be endowed, how do you allocate those resources? Where do you put your time, your energy, and your money? I think that's a real challenge to be in place, because if you're going to be in place, you have to be in place well. You have to be present. But if you're also going to be around the world and around the country, you have to do that well, and you have to have a presence there. So how do you allocate your time and your resources and have that? And I don't think it's sort of like parenting to me, in which I don't think you ever find a balance. I don't know about you. I never found like a homework balance. It was just more of it's more of a question of what do you have the opportunity to drive in a particular moment. So that's the first challenge that comes with being in place. The second challenge is obvious, which is that you're going to get yelled at. And I just would, I want to say that to you all leaders who are leading for good, which is, I think too often, those of us who want to make change don't want to hear directly from the people who we want to make change with, who, if things need to be changed, things are not good where they are, and they're not going to be happy with the status quo. And the good news is I work for a guy who was a community organizer, so he's okay with loud, he's okay with messy. You don't have to be polite and grateful when you come into the room with us. And that gives us the opportunity, I think, to learn, to hear, and to do something that is the mission of the organization. I'll just build on something that you said. When President Obama decided to build the center in Chicago and decided what he wanted to do after his presidency was over, he saw the world that we see today. Obviously, you know, so much of what we see today didn't start in what one might call the Obama era, the start of the Obama presidency, but it certainly came to fore when we realized that there was more an incentive to be divisive than there was to build something together. And that is only accelerated over time, and we really do see ourselves in this moment between tribe and community. And we've decided to put our stake in the ground in community, which means we have to build in community, because there's no place that is a symbol of change that needs to be made right now, not only in the city, but around the world in the south side of Chicago. Let's just face it, it is. And so that means that we have to make contact with that, get in the game with that, and deal with the gap and sit in the gap that you just described between where things are, where things used to be, and the structures and the mindsets that got us there, which in some ways is represented by the presidency. So we just got to make contact with all of that, bring people into the process and work through it.
There's a lot to kick us off there. And that's exactly what I was hoping for, because we have an entire day to grapple with it. But I want to dig in a little bit more right here. And Colleen, I want to dig in with you, which is you are essentially building something that is, I believe, about more resources to people who might not have had them. Is that what the purpose is?
The purpose, I mean, I think Michael just talked about some of the gaps that we see and sitting in those gaps. And I think for us, the purpose is really closing a gap. You know, women in this country have been leading an economic revolution, growing businesses 2 times faster than the national average. They own nearly 50% of all small businesses in the U.S. Women of color are driving that exponential growth. In 2019, women of color started 89% of the new businesses that were opened every day. They owned a full 50% of the women's economy. And yet, there's a gap. Despite the size of that market, the power, the growth, women are accessing 16% of commercial business loans. And when you look at the dollar amount, it's even worse. It's 4%. So we really formed First Women's Bank to help close that gap. You know, and we're doing that in a number of ways. I mean, not only are we, bringing innovative capital solutions to areas where women businesses are concentrated, but back to that point around community, we know that financial institutions that deliver the best financial outcomes for their clients provide them with more. So we're really building a community of resources, support, and inspiration for our clients and for our potential clients. Our goal is really to move the needle. That means more women businesses in the pipeline. So we may have a women business owner that comes to us today, is in startup mode, and can't yet qualify for that loan. So first and foremost, we'll help to try to connect them to the capital they need, but we'll also try to connect them to networks of opportunity, to mentors, to resources to help them with their business plans, so that hopefully they grow to that point where they can become a client of ours and get that loan, and we have more successful businesses that create a more equal economy.
So as we think about this idea of community broadly and community that we are connecting, and then we link it to access to dollars. Thru, you sit in the middle of that. You've raised $25 million for Cohesion. You lead Cohesion. Tell us why we need Cohesion. I think the name works so well today as I think about our discussion. But it's also about the fact that we're inside a building. So we spent a lot of time inside buildings in the last couple of years. Tell us about Cohesion and what this moment means to your growth and your leadership in this company.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. You kicked off by talking about how leading for greater good is about people in place. And so bringing and really understanding how you bring those together in a cohesive manner is really the basis of what we do at Cohesion. So Cohesion is this smart building platform that incorporates sustainability and ESG into smart building operations and superior human experience. And we do that by integrating different systems. And if you kind of look at where the real estate industry has been, it has been rocked to its core. The last 2 years, it's been happening, it's kind of been on the verge for the last 10 plus years with climate change, now with hybrid work or even the lack of use of space, people not returning to buildings so that community is not being built. These are all kind of the principles of ESG that this all lies under. And so for us, we're bringing technological solutions to bring all of that together in a seamless experience. So how are we bringing more transparency to energy solutions? How are we bringing transparency to how people use space, when they use space, what they care about, and bringing a seamless experience to those experiences inside of spaces and community? How do we bring people into collaborative spaces so that they can be their best selves and we can start to innovate for the greater good of what's going on? And so what we do and what we believe in is that a lot of this is an exposure to data around how everything is operating inside of buildings. And so we incorporate all the data from human sources, from building sources, from IoT, to have that kind of transparency. And we're optimizing environments and place for that. So we believe that, in general, it's all about new technology solutions that can expose and make transparent all the different opportunities that we have to lead for greater good. But I do think that in general, where the world is today, we have to really pay attention to place and make it somewhere that people want to come back to for community.
And Michael Fassnacht, when I think about place, when we were preparing and having a conversation about this, we talked about World Business Chicago, bringing organizations to or helping organizations expand in Chicago and in all of Chicago. How are you making sure that this is for all of Chicago?
So thank you for having me on the panel. Yeah, it's important, like you said, at World Business Chicago, we're focusing on helping, first of all, existing large companies to stay in Chicago and expand, and secondly, attracting new companies. And I'm a business guy, so look at, okay, what is our KPI? And it's very simple. We created the Pro-Chicago Choice KPI, which means companies who made a decision to stay and expand significantly, and companies who move here. And last year, we had 173 Pro-Chicago decisions, 100 expanded significantly, 73 moved, and 39 on the south and west side. So I look every week because of at these numbers, because if a company's just moved to the Fulton market that is booming and not to our neighbors in southwest side, we cannot call ourselves a great global city. So now I look at as well, what are the root causes that it's only 39 and not more? It's roughly 20%. And one of the reasons is we are not good about pitching our neighborhoods on the south and west side. So we're building our pitch books, because I'm a business development guy, of how can we sell Chatham to a company? Because ultimately, we have to move away from the mindset that we go to big corporations, they write their annual charity check, and we are very grateful. We do take their checks, but we really want their business. And we have to work hard, because ultimately, the Chicago will only become a true amazing place when we help businesses to understand that investing in the southwest side is not a charity. It drives business, it creates value, and it taps into a talent pool on the southwest side that is just amazing. And we have example like everyone talks about Discover Financial Services, the call center, and many other examples that it's a great, smart business decision to as well invest in the south and west side.
The data. I love the data. You've both talked about data. In fact, everyone here has sort of implied that data is behind the scenes. Data to me is just another way to tell the story. And so I'm interested in, as you're looking in these times, how are you telling stories that help more people connect to your work? Colleen, I'll start with you.
I don't mind taking that question. And I mean, first of all, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at First Women's Bank, so that's a key part of my role. But I think it's really critical to what we're doing at First Women's Bank. So we're the first new bank in Chicago and Illinois in more than a decade. We raised $36 million in our capital raise. One of our largest investors is Billie Jean King. Marianne Markowitz, our CEO, was CFO of Obama 08. She led the SBA in that administration all 8 years, both regionally and nationally. And I say all of that not as a commercial, but with all of that sort of star power around the bank, that's not the face of our bank. The face of our bank is our clients. This bank was built with purpose at the core. And so the stories of our clients who are successful, that is the face of our bank. And so we've just started, we've released 2 videos of some of our first clients. The first, I'll just tell you one of them, mother-daughter team, Black women-owned business. They're opening in about 2 weeks. I'm going down there next Friday in Burbank, so just across the street from the city, but southwest suburb, a tropical smoothie cafe. Mom was a CPS teacher and then principal. Her daughter, Aisha, went to Howard undergrad, got her MBA at Michigan. She now works at a big consulting firm on digital transformation, and they've always dreamed of opening a business together. And, they came to First Women's Bank, and we were able to help them do it after they talked to a lot of other banks. And I think part of that is because also understanding the story, understanding our client's story, their experience, that's a real difference maker at our bank. It really matters to us in the decision-making process. So we released another videos. We'll continue to do that, but you'll continue to see stories be at the core of how we build our bank and what our brand really stands for.
I'd love to take this one too. So from a data perspective, we are coming out of, or hopefully coming out of a pandemic, but we had a lot of transparency as to what we don't know about space, right? It was very clear that we don't know about the air that we breathe, the indoor air quality, in indoor and outdoor air quality. And so during the pandemic, we launched a program about collecting data around what pollutants are in space in real time. And we also created a program that allowed for real-time optimization to bring in fresh air into spaces when pollutants were at high levels. Nobody really believed that we could do this. And so data was really one of those things that helped tell the story of it's not only kind of easy to do, right? Not that our technology is easy, but really the technology is there. It's about implementation, and it's about change management, and it's about people believing that you can make change in this. And so in real time, within 10 minutes, we're reducing 75% of pollutants through our programs in large commercial spaces. So we're in million-square-foot buildings, and the adoption of what's happening, we've gotten about 7 buildings in Chicago. That's it. And so when we talk with data and we talk about changing for purpose, it has to be tied to the purpose side of it, not the profit side of it. And profit is really just dollars in most people in the real estate space's mind. But really, it should be about the good for what happens, right? We just lost 2 years of people not being in place because they were not open to these ideas. And so I think data is huge for us to transform. And what we're going to do with that data is help. There's a policy now in Congress that has been introduced called the Airborne Act that will incentivize commercial real estate owners to be starting to upgrade their HVAC systems so that we can improve air quality. And that would be tax credit incentives. So hopefully, that will get some momentum. But those are things that we could do with data to really drive change.
Stories are powerful. Stories, not just stories, stories create reality and create mental concept of how we think about ourselves and the city. And if you look at the past of Chicago, I think most stories about Chicago were always focused on downtown, mostly told by white, male, heterosexual. And I think we have to acknowledge that, and we cannot drive change in our city if we don't embrace all the different stories that are happening across all 77 neighborhoods told by very different people. So I think we sometimes underestimate. So we always look at the Carl Burnham plan, and you look at the photos, and no one dares to say, look, don't you see the photo of the guys who created the plan, and we like the plan? So we have to be honest about the stories that have been told in the past, and we have to be much more intentional. What are the stories we're telling in the future? That's why I think the Obama Center is such a critical thing. And I think we can never underestimate the power of stories and who's telling them. And I think we have to be very intentional of how we're changing that. And that's my job, partly in my side job as a CMO, to try to highlight things that we have never highlighted in our city.
To me, behind the idea of stories, though, is really about listening. It's not just about the telling. It's about who gets to tell a story and who's listened enough to know what actually matters. And Michael, I'd love to know, how do you actually create an organization that listens?
Yeah. Well, I think like most things, and this is why we're talking about leadership, it comes from the top. And I think that, a lot of leaders feel pressure to sort of be in a state of idolatry. And that means, I want to come and I got to tell you something because I want you to admire me. I want you to listen to me. I want you to see me as the leader. But every leader that I've admired, I admire mostly because they listen. Mm-hmm. And so just a quick example, a quick story I'll share that has really animated the way I think about things. So the biggest contract we were ever going to give out at the center was to our general contractor, to the builder of the center. And so I sat and talked with the businesses of color in the construction industry. And these businesses had been in a city with a set-aside program since I think Mayor Harold Washington was elected. And I looked at the scale of the businesses of color in the construction industry, and they paled in comparison to the majority businesses. And so I asked them, sort of what was going on, and what I found out was that they sort of all had become permanent subs. They had all kind of fit within this set-aside program, and if you were building something, you got a piece of something, a parking lot, and you gave it to a black contractor, and you fulfilled your obligation. And then when there was a larger prime opportunity, none of those contractors were able to compete for the prime opportunity because they couldn't show they had the larger experience. So we wanted to shake that up. When we did it through the marketplace, we did it through our RFP. And we found from these, particularly these black-owned firms, they didn't have the scale to take the risk in the bonding to do 51% to be a majority in our project. Right, would have broken their companies at that level of risk. So they got together and formed. These are companies that compete with each other fiercely for this set-aside projects. Got together, formed a JV, went and interviewed other large majority companies, picked Turner, and cut a deal where they are 51% of the profit and 49% of the risk. And now they're in the center of every discussion. And what that has allowed us to do is we have a different conversation when it comes to workforce. We have a different conversation when it comes to how do we break up our contracts in order to bring smaller, women-owned, or other businesses into the mix, because I'm dealing with a group of business owners that have already innovated their way through in a different kind of paradigm at themselves as business owners, working through that, and now understand the opportunity to cascade that down through the project. So just a little bit of listening early kind of created a whole new paradigm, and they can compete for other projects. And I'm also seeing now on the south side of Chicago in particular, that's sort of creating a new standard for how to do business there. So you can't do business the old way if you could build the Obama Center in this way, because I don't care what you're doing, it's probably not going to be more complicated than that. So it creates a different model and a story that we can tell each other. So that's kind of how listening has made an impact in our world.
When you're talking about listening, you actually also talked about, at first, the set-aside. It was an obligation.
Right.
And essentially, you've completely flipped that with your partnership to an aspiration to go bigger with innovation to get you there. You're essentially changing the economy.
Well, don't put that much pressure on me. I know there are other panelists. I guess the only other thing I'll say on this, and I'd be interested to see if others have a thought, which is that I think we are in a business paradigm in which doing good is something that you check the box on the side, and you wonder why you're not getting enough credit for it, right? When you put it into the center of your mission and you start to measure it and you start to ask questions about it, what I found is even if you don't meet the goal, so the box actually doesn't get checked perhaps, you get a better conversation, you get more credit for it, you get more loyalty, you get more. And so I think that's when Michael talks about, and you've lived this and you're building this, the value proposition around it. If you put it on the side of something, it changes it. And I learned that the hard way, both in my marriage and raising kids. So I'm trying to apply it. I'm trying to apply it in my professional life. See if I can get it right here.
Leading for good applies everywhere.
Just one thought, because purpose is always sound so esoteric. I think it also comes down to how you look at yourself as a leader. And my hypothesis is you cannot be in today's world a successful business leader without being a civic leader who's trying to make his or her or their community a better place. One of the concerns I have right now, a lot of business leaders have their 3 to 5 residences across the country or the world and moving from one to another and lose all connectivity to a physical place.
Yes.
And we have to, you cannot be a great business leader today without being a great civic leader. And you cannot be a civic leader if you're not grounded in a place, in a community, and try to understand that.
I'd love to build on that. Colleen, I want to ask you a question. As you pull this together and this idea of purpose, you put it in the name of your company.
Yeah.
How did that affect your ability to build partnerships, raise money, and essentially start to take off?
Well, I mean, we do say it's in the name, right? And literally, we're the first. Which is, and sometimes it's hard to believe. And I'll tell you, early on, one of the challenges we had is that we often had people that said, "Oh, you know, the First Women's Bank, they thought we were a nonprofit. They thought it was microlending." You know, absolutely not. I just described to you the story of Ruth and Aisha, you know, who've had these unbelievable careers. They're incredibly sophisticated businesswomen, and they just need a different experience. And so from a partnership perspective, partnership's a huge part of our strategy, and I think the fact that we've been able to build purpose from the core. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's made, I don't like to tell the team this, but it's made my job a lot easier. You know, I've worked in large corporations where you've later on gone looking for purpose, and it's there, by the way. I'm not suggesting that it's not, but you've grown so much that you maybe have lost sight of that. It's part of who we are. We like to say it's in our DNA. You know, our clients are innovators and leaders and entrepreneurs and their moms and their daughters and their caregivers. So are we. You know, we just started a business. We just raised, you know, a group of women in the middle of a pandemic. We raised $36 million for this bank. And I think because of that lens, we've then been able to parlay that into partnership. And we're offering innovative capital solutions, like I said, to grow the women's economy, but we've really created a platform to consolidate support from all parts of the economy for women-owned businesses. So when I talked about our investors like Billie Jean King and Fidelity Investments and Bank of America have invested with 200 others. We have partners. We just announced United Airlines and Microsoft. They're keeping deposit at First Women's Bank for zero return, for the social return on that investment, because it's a concrete way for them to show their support for the women's equality, for the women's economy, and for gender equality. We have businesses and nonprofits who are moving their bank. You know, we offer a bank that's on a mission. Everybody has to bank somewhere, but when you bank with us, you understand the impact that banking relationship, that the deposits you might hold anywhere can have. And then we have a full suite of personal products so that anybody can really join this community, you know, put their money on a mission, leverage their cash for impact, and make a difference. And I think, you know, in a lot of ways that First Women's Bank, you know, the name does say it all, but I think everything we're doing behind it, the stories we talked about before, the community that we're wrapping around this, I think that will make it true, that will make a difference, and that is bringing and, you know, consolidating that support for women business owners.
Thru, I want to build on that with you. And what I want to ask you about is, you're the founder, and you are essentially, and no pressure, yeah, totally no pressure. 25 million, it's all good. You're an executive leading with purpose, and the world shifted completely in your sector. How does purpose help you lead?
That is a great question. You know, I think that it's a lot of education because the whole sector is changing, right? I think it's weaving in the storytelling. When I talk about the fundamental changes, right, I mentioned a few. One kind of big stat that I came across was if buildings in general, right, don't become net zero by 2038, which isn't actually that far off, it's 16 years from now, they're obsolete for the rest of life because they will never be able to catch up from a climate change perspective. That is a harrowing stat, right? And so when you think about the purpose, that's one, you know, that for buildings, which is the largest industry in the world, that's a huge telling stat that we have to do something. The other is this concept of hybrid work, or how 50% of workers never want to come back to an office building. I am very bullish on office buildings coming back to life, not just for community, but also because I think that we have to recognize that if we let this sector fail, there's massive economic, you know, there's a massive economic problem behind that. And there's a community problem behind it, and a mental health problem behind it, because we're not creating community. So I think that when we think about the purpose, I think buildings are a static thing, but they're not, that's what people see them as, and it's really a living, breathing, like, part of life and part of community that we have to invest in. We have to really think about, it's not just a profit, it's not a place for profit. It can be, but it also has to be, well, you got to think about the purpose first. And so our purpose was really, let's bring smart technology into buildings so that we can help run them more efficiently and optimize conditions and save energy and water. But that purpose has kind of shifted to making sure now, as we get this whole concept of change, we have to think about it as more of, in the framework of ESG, it is the social purpose, right, of bringing community back into spaces. And so I think all of us sitting up here have places that we're building, right, community around, and I think that's really important. So I think for us, leading with purpose has become more concrete over the last couple of years, more so than ever.
Yeah.
So.
I'm always amazed when I realize we spend 90% of our time indoors.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Indoors. So where that building is, and that building matters tremendously to our daily experience. Michael, you work across the city, and you work with buildings across the city. So you are constantly building partnerships. How does purpose help you build partnerships?
I think, Michael said it, it's, I come from the private sector. The last 2 years in the kind of public sector showed me that this is a complicated world. There are a lot of strong opinions. You think when you're a CEO of a business, it's complicated. No, public sector is so much more complicated. People are very passionate about their own opinions. But you cannot get anything done in the public sector with all these partnerships. So you have to learn, you have to listen. But the purpose also helps you to have your North Star.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of noise out there. If you see, like yesterday was, a governor from a random state created a lot of noise. And you have to see what matters in this and what doesn't matter to build the right partnership. So I think the purpose is a real North Star that helps you stay centered emotionally as well, to try to achieve something that is very difficult. And the public sector just have so many partners. That's what I learned. And so I can always say, whoever works in the public sector, I admire you. Thank you for your service. And tell business people who think they have a tough jobs that this is nothing. So, and I have to run, that's why. Thank you for having me here.
Exactly.
Opening up some. Thank you.
Thank you. On that note, I want to say thank you, Michael, for jumping in. He's got an incredibly packed day, but leading with purpose and leading for good fit your day. Thank you.
Good exit.
Yeah, that is
Get
we have a strategically placed clock right there.
Let's wrap the
Yeah, that's good.
9:25 was when he had to go.
That's good exit.
Boom. Boom.
Right.
Because when you lead with purpose, you got to execute.
Right, that's right.
And that's what we're doing here. So, Michael, I want to ask you a question. As we're thinking about leadership and we're thinking about partnership, we're really thinking about us as individuals. And how do we as individuals in all the different leadership roles that we play, how do we find that community? You don't get to hang out on panels like this all the time.
Well, I think the first thing is, for me, this is just going to be, I'm going to be speaking personally here, is over time I now have come to own my story. And I think in really understanding and owning my story, it's given me a way to be intentional about the community that I build. So I got this interesting last name because my father left our family before I was born. My mother remarried. We moved from Chatham to Uptown, into a Latvian family. And so that, it was a part of my story that, frankly, I didn't always own. But now owning that, I do a lot of work with young people in the city, particularly young people of color, particularly black kids on the south and west side of Chicago. And the thing that I have found is that out of all the things that I get a million things out of those relationships, the thing that they have told me they get most out of the relationship with me, which I actually think everybody in this room can do, is that they get connected to purpose. I'm not just saying that because we're here. I'm telling you that most of the young people in this city are usually either sorted as high flyers or problems. And if you're sorted in the problem category, then that's how you're talked to, that's how you're spoken about, that's how you're labeled, that's how you're seen in school, particularly out of school, and beyond. And if we can find a way to do what someone did for me, what probably a bunch of people did for everybody in this room, a way to speak to a young person, either individually or even more importantly, maybe collectively, about who they are in the life of this city, who they are to us, and then act based on that and treat them much more like young people who want to do the same things that we do but may have different obstacles in their way, and spend more time thinking about removing their obstacles rather than centering them as problems or the problems that they face. I have seen it make a big difference. And the only way I was ever able to step into that space is to own my story. And in owning my story, I've been able to build community, because the last thing I'll say on this is we're all like incredibly busy, right? As we have big jobs. I want to be a father. I want to stay married. I want my wife to be happy with me. Thank God, we looked at each other after a year in the pandemic and we were like, it is really, really lucky that I like you, she said. So if I did not like you, we'd have major problems. So I think, building that community, you have to be intentional about it, and knowing my story has allowed me to do that.
Purpose on purpose.
Right.
And know yourself.
Right.
I want to ask one more question, and then we'll get a chance to open it up to everybody. My last question, and I want to make sure that both of you get a chance to answer it. It's very similar to what I just asked Michael, but as you are executives and leaders and thinking about the world you want to create, what gives you hope?
You go.
Great. I'm very proud of the intentionality that we had around building our staff. We're about 52 employees here in the United States, mostly here in Chicago. 80% of us are here in Chicago. And then we've got a global workforce around software engineering in India, South America, and Eastern Europe. 76% of our staff is from underrepresented communities. So I'm extremely proud of that. And it wasn't, it was intentional, but it wasn't at the same time. It was that people were starting to see how we were working together and why we were working together, and that we were just really just genuine people. And so I think for me, the intentionality of that purpose is part of who we are, and it really allows for everyone in my company has a voice. So everyone brings ideas and collaboration. It's getting a lot stronger because we're actually back in physical space, which I'm excited about. But we are a hybrid workforce, and we are putting purpose behind what we do. And so we ask a lot of tough questions, and we allow for that vulnerability inside of that space. And so when I think about leading our company, it's about we've got a greater purpose, and it's the purpose that I laid out kind of today. And I think part of that is really thinking about who you want to be part of your community, your space, your company, and your partners, and thinking about how you bring all of that together. So I think for us, it's going to be continuing to do that. We're facing another challenging time ahead of us economically, and so it's going to be keeping our head up and always kind of reminding ourselves of the mission. As I was listening to all of you talking, it kind of reminded me, we're going, everybody's going through a tough time right now, but it reminded me that I have to remember to do that inside of our offices too.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add on to that. I think when you really have purpose at the core, there's something to be said for the power of attraction. So you tend to attract people that really care about that mission. And we're seeing that sort of in layers around the bank. So, starting with our team, and I think as a leader, we've built this incredible team. Most of us never knew each other, especially at the leadership level. That was all really through the power of networks and through the communities that we've built, and we continue to build that community. We're building a 100-member advisory board. We have about 30 members now of leaders, that are in, small business leaders, professional expertise, areas of support for small businesses like accounting and legal and marketing. And we talked about some of the partners, some of the sponsors here today. Comcast is one of our partners, and William Blair is one of our partners. But I think, over my career, when I think about purpose, certainly the organization has a purpose, and you go to work every day to try to achieve that goal. But my real purpose as a leader, as a mom, as a wife, at the end of the day, is to really care for those people You know, I think that as an organization, when you have empathy, when you connect to one another, that's when you succeed. And I think sometimes we forget that we need to know, you know, and this is hard right now as we hopefully we'll come back and we'll be together more, and we've had to do this on Zoom, but knowing each other, you know, personally and professionally, if you're going to lead with purpose and you're going to take people on a journey that's purpose-driven, you need to bring them along with you as human beings and as professionals.
I couldn't have transitioned any better to bringing everyone into the conversation. We'd love to open it up. Part of the beauty of an event like this is both the opportunity to reflect, but the opportunity to engage. And I'd love to open the floor to any folks who have questions for our panel. And I think we have mics that are available. So
Or if you
Ella
can
has
shout,
a
yeah.
mic.
I like.
Yeah, we're gonna know each other.
Comfortable here.
Make me move.
Very secure and cozy.
Thank you all for all of your amazing observations today. I had a question around, it seems to me that Chicago is a pretty unique place for these things to happen relative to people leaning into their purpose and creating the businesses that also reflect that. I just want to get your perspective. I know Michael's gone, so we can't give him information about Chicago anymore, but what do you think makes Chicago a good place to do exactly what you all are doing?
Ooh, can I jump in really quickly? So Dory, by the way, is the co-chair of our advisory board and a huge friend and supporter of First Women's Bank. But I want to point out, when I talked about all the data around the women's economy, Chicago has an incredibly robust women's economy, nearly 400,000 women-owned small businesses, and the largest percent of female founders of any city in the world. At least that was pre-pandemic. I don't think we'll be surprised to see that grows beyond. And there's just such a sense of community here. So while we're a national bank, we're so proud to call this city our home and this women's economy here in Chicago to be able to connect with it.
I'll jump in there. So raising capital as a female, minority female, is actually very difficult, as we've kind of laid out. Raising 25 million is no easy feat, but 93% of my capital came from Chicago. Chicago
That's awesome.
angels, Chicago investors, and so. And I had like 100+ conversations with Coastal money, and nobody came in. And so when I think about the diversity and the inclusion that we actually have here, we don't have it right, we don't have it perfect, but we're ahead of a lot of different cities. And so I think for us, that's been huge. And Chicago is also our largest market from an architectural perspective, doing the right things in smart buildings. And so we're not as a startup and as a female-led startup, we could be in like 100,000 square foot buildings, right? But our buildings everyone in Chicago is over 1 million square feet. So the partnership that we get here and the ability to try new things and give us a chance, I think is stronger than any other city. So I think it's huge for us.
Awesome.
You know, when I grew up here, obviously, and left and, you know, went to DC and got on a magic carpet ride and did that and came back. When I came back, I really so inspired by the number of people who are making contact with the problems of our time in this city. Some are right here on stage with me, and just being successful in finding solutions. And I actually think that as one of the things that Michael and I have talked about is I really want to tell that story more. I think we should tell that story a lot more often about the way we are sort of rolling up our sleeves and not only admiring problems, but getting to work to solve them. The other thing I'd say is that it's remarkable how connected this group of people is. If there's one critique that I have of us, and I'm looking to work on this through our work with the My Brother's Keeper Alliance, is I think we're sort of waiting for some other infrastructure to create a systematic change. I think we're very, we're sort of a political city, and I came out of politics. And so, and I sort of got into politics kind of at the beginning, beginning of the end of the sort of fabled machine. I think we're still in some ways, as a culture, waiting for that machine to be the one that comes together and to have that political infrastructure make these decisions. And it doesn't exist anymore. And it's not gonna save us. And I think if we could spend more time doing handoffs within the systems that work together, I think that change will accelerate much more quickly. I see everybody working, even myself, working incredibly hard on the thing that I'm trying to get done, but it really has us working in a silo, and our conversations are partnerships oriented, which I think is great, but that's a very transactional way to look at the change, and I think we have the opportunity to be more systems oriented, which requires more handoffs, more choices to, hey, let's all do this one thing together, because the data shows us if we do this one thing together, we could really move the needle. And I think we're gonna try that. You'll see us do that with boys and young men of color in the city, and we could use your help, and there'll be more to come.
Interesting, it's back to both meanings of on purpose. It's intentionality to the greater good. I'd love to open it up again. Who else wants to jump in here? I see a mic in the back.
Is it working? Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Cecil. I'm the founder of an organization called the Golden Baton Group that does minority leadership development. So we exist to support the growth and development of that next generation of minority leaders. I would be curious to know, what would be your guys' biggest advice as it relates to what would be your message to that next generation as they navigate this new challenging environment?
We all like to.
I mean, yeah, I know exactly. You're doing it. You want to start?
Sure. You know, it's simple. I think it's really work hard, be good, and lead with purpose. Like, I know it's a cop-out on the stage because we've been talking about it, but it is what I talk about with my staff too, is really just work hard and think about why you're doing it, and be smart about it, ask a lot of questions, have a voice. And I think that's what all of our leaders have to really do, is the work hard piece has to be there if we want to make change.
Yeah, and I would, I've got 5 daughters in their 20s, and we have this conversation actually a lot about the world is so different for them, and in some ways I think so much more challenging. And I think it's easy to lose focus because there's so much more noise than there was when I was that age, and I feel like it was a little bit easier to focus. But I think at the end of the day, it goes back to sort of what I was talking about around leading with purpose. I mean, I think growing in purpose is just as important, and I think staying authentic to who you are and making sure that you're choosing organizations that represent your values so that your passion really can come through. And then, I mean, of course, what Thru said, I mean, be good, be kind, work hard. But I think that selection process and having that filter of what really matters to you, kind of filtering out the noise and really being true to yourself is a key part of that.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time on this at our organization, sort of, and I think the first thing I'd say is values will stand the test of time and will drive the innovation, the decision making, the change, and I think so. Time spent, again, knowing your story, understanding the values that you want to center around, and making decisions and choices around that is something that is really important to us, because I think we see young people of color who are leaders, or women or young people who are leaders. They have the opportunity to innovate, I think, in incredibly powerful ways right now. And I think we are really interested in making sure that as you're innovating, you're connecting with something larger than yourself, so that you can see more impact in the changes that you're making, in the different ways you're seeing the world. And I think we've also seen people innovate in ways that have torn us apart, and really made the world a worse place. And so connecting in centering in those values as you innovate. I want you to, I want people to move fast and break things in order to do good. not just for its own sake.
Absolutely. I've got time for a couple more questions. I see 3 hands up.
Quick question back here. Along those lines, my name is Marta Carrera-Slave. I'm from Aon. How do you know you're pushing hard enough? And I'll tell you why I'm asking. This is in the DE&I space. A lot of what you said has resonated with me. I think still in the diversity space, we're kind of in that subcontractor status, like wait your turn. And I think the last 2 years, really raised awareness in corporate America about DE&I, but it feels very much like companies are saying the right things, and we're in danger of just checking the boxes.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
How hard do you push? Are we pushing hard enough? And how do you know that you really are effectuating change? Otherwise, I feel like it's going to be sort of a series of, circles that just continue.
Yeah, having spent a lot of time in the political world and then in the nonprofit world, it's been interesting to me now that I've started to I'm on a couple of private sector boards. The amount of tough conversations, challenging and get in your face that happens in the boardroom, right? It's the way we do business. It's the way that's how you know you're sharp. And that's why I said that nobody wants to get uncomfortable when it comes to doing good. They just want people to be grateful. But in every other part of their professional life, if there's no friction, if somebody's not getting a little red in the face, if somebody's not, asking the tough question, people say, oh, that's flabby, that's soft, you're not moving the needle, you're not putting pressure on yourself. And then when it comes to DEI work, everybody wants to just, be happy and get thanked for, writing a little check. And I think that, it really is taking what made you successful and what's making you successful in a very hard-nosed, complex environment, and just pulling that across the rest of your work and not allowing the DEI space to kind of coast. Because, as Marty Nesbitt, who's our board chair, has said, one of the things that we've seen over the last years, we told y'all the pitchforks are coming. The pitchforks are here, right? People are not going to accept anymore the status quo. And if you want to be successful, and there is no place to escape it anymore, right? That's one of the things that just to be real about it, all the conversations that I hear are from people who live downtown, are in this neighborhood and that neighborhood, and all of a sudden feel uncomfortable because of what's going on around here in the city. And my answer to them is, welcome to our world.
Right.
You actually have the resources and the opportunity to win here and to have Chicago show. I'm like super worked up now. Have Chicago show the rest of the country and the world how to get out of this space. Because everybody's dealing with this, from Paris to Mumbai to rural communities, everybody's trying to figure this out. We actually have the opportunity to take what we know and create a path forward. All right, I'm shut up.
Amazing.
We'll take it.
It's called leading for good, not worked up for good, but we will. I think a little
Get worked up, too.
A little
Yeah,
passion
exactly.
drives a long way. We have time for one last question quickly, and then we're going to turn it over to our tables to dig in. So let's have one more for the panel. I see a familiar face.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming to this panel, and we really enjoyed your conversations and your observations. I wanted to focus on the title of this panel, Changing World. And so I was hoping that, just that we can bring it to a global perspective a little bit. I always thought that if you want to be on purpose locally, you have to be on purpose globally. And the world is changing very rapidly, and we are no longer immune the way that we used to be. What is happening in Ukraine, what is happening in terms of immigration is affecting what we are doing. Can you expand a little bit about your effort in being on purpose at a global stage?
Sure. I can start on that. I think, there was a BCG study in 2019, I think it was in Harvard Business Review, that suggested that when men and women participate equally as entrepreneurs, the global economy could grow somewhere between $3 and $5 trillion, just equally. So, that's part of our mission at the bank. The first part of the mission is to grow the economy. The second part of our mission is to elevate the role of women within it. So first, let's just get everyone playing equally. And the other part of that study that we've talked a little bit about today was that one of the ways we need to do that to support women entrepreneurs is really to leverage networks. You know, women are great networks. They value their networks. They just don't have the time necessarily always with all they balance to nurture those networks in the same way. And historically, there have been a lot of professional networks that women have been, they were designed without the idea that women would ever be in the workforce, and they grew that way. And so one of the things that we're doing to kind of get to that place to help grow the global economy is to build what we call the First Women's Business Collective, like I said earlier, to wrap our clients, our future clients, to wrap women business owners in a community that helps them to grow and thrive, to build that network in with their banking relationship from the start.
I can also chime in on changing the world. Climate change is something that the world is going to dealing with. I mean, it's not going to. We're in it. And it's something that we can't just do locally. We can learn locally. We could create technology solutions because we have the resources and means to do so, but we quickly have to learn and then expand into the other parts of the world so that change can actually happen. Because if we focus on local change, it's not going to do anything for what we're going after. So, and I think climate change is very real, and it's a good example, but I do think that there's applicability across all different industries and sectors for that and issues.
You know, speaking of climate change, so every time President Obama kind of goes out there, we like to surround him with young leaders because it inspires him, and he also, you know, gets a chance to get his thinking sharpened, and he gets a chance to inspire them. So we went to COP, the climate change conference, and we had him sit down with about a dozen young leaders, and then he was in Chicago in December, and we had him sit down with about a dozen young leaders who were working on, you know, around violence or food insecurity in some of the toughest neighborhoods in the city. So he sat down with young people from around the world who are working on climate change, advocating, and these young people in the inner cities of Chicago and these neighborhoods, right? And he said that his feedback to us was that they asked him the same questions. They were grappling with the same things. Some of what we talked about here, like how do you manage information? How do you sustain yourself? How do you keep yourself motivated? But these problems around tribe and community and how we make individual decisions for the collective good in a fast-moving, high-pressure, ever-changing economy that is connected, young leaders are dealing with that everywhere now. And that means to me that a place like this and others can create solutions that can scale pretty quickly if there's a dialogue and if there's the opportunity to have that discussion. And so I really do think that, just to do Michael's job for him for a second, you know, Chicago has the opportunity to be a world-class global city, and I think this is the opportunity. You know, you think about New York, you think about Boston, you think about the Bay Area, cities in the South. They have different ways that they pop and stand out. And I think this is where Chicago can really stand out in making contact with these solutions and then scaling and modeling them across the world.
From Chicago to the world, I want to thank our opening panel.
You did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
It's been fun. So when we think about leading for good, I couldn't ask for a better stage, but I also couldn't ask for a better room. I know many of you in the room, and we could have swapped out this panel, and I think we would have come back to, it's know yourself. It's think about purpose. Build teams around that. Tell your stories, know your data, but listen. So I want to thank you for bringing us this incredible opportunity to dig in with you. We now have an opportunity to take that to your table, and it's very intentional. I want you all to know each other. I'm going to run around and meet more of you that I don't know. But we have a few questions just to center the discussion. But create a table. Walk out if you're knowing someone that you didn't know, because we together are going to build this community of change makers, not just for Chicago, but for the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.